going to take a more of an in-depth look at those UK elections. Miranda, I was quite surprised to see how much coverage it was getting here in the United States.
I think more
well, the result was surprising too, of course, but it was everybody was talking about it here in the colonies, as they like to say over across the pond.
In the colonies. They say that, huh?
They still say that.
Last night, British Prime Minister David Cameron and his party won the election in pretty much a landslide.
Yeah, Cameron called it the sweetest victory of all. Big surprise for him. Newsmax executive editor Ken Chandler joining us live now from New York. Ken, here's what Cameron had to say in front of the Prime Minister's residence at 10 Downing Street this morning. Let's take a listen.
We must ensure that we bring our country together. As I said in the small hours of this morning, we will govern as a party of one nation, one united kingdom.
So it's all united. Everybody's working together, Ken, here in the UK. But this is going to be very difficult for David Cameron moving ahead here. He does not have much of a majority, does he?
Well, you're absolutely right. It's a very slim majority. And in any other situation, this would probably be regarded as some kind of crisis. But, you know, with the expectations of a hung parliament from the opinion polls, which turned out to be completely wrong, now he does have a majority. But it's a 5-year parliament. He has about a majority, I think, of about 5 seats at the moment. But, you know, during the course of a parliament, people die, there are policy revolts, all sorts of things can happen. So Cameron is going to have to be very cautious and slow-moving as he goes along.
Now, he's the first Conservative Prime Minister to win consecutive elections since Margaret Thatcher. But considering his power has been damaged a little bit, can he still be that same kind of partner that Thatcher was to the United States when she was the Prime Minister?
I think it's going to be much more difficult for him. I think, you know, he does have this razor-thin majority. There are all sorts of issues that are going to bubble up. For instance, whether the United Kingdom should remain in the European Union. There's going to be a referendum on that. He is going to be, I think, and the British people are going to be unwilling to get involved in any overseas adventures. So I think that Britain is going to be a less reliable ally for the United States going forward.
Ken, I have to ask you, why did so many people get this so wrong? Because this was supposed to be a very tight race.
Right. Oh my God, there's egg on everybody's face in Britain this morning, but most notably the pollsters. I think they got it wrong for 3 reasons. One, a lot of people said that they were going to make their decision at the last minute. 2, a lot of them didn't want to admit to pollsters that they were actually going to vote Conservative. You know, like in this country, some people, for whatever reason, are embarrassed to say they're Republicans. In the UK, they don't want to say they're Conservatives. And thirdly, I think it's just getting harder and harder for pollsters to get an accurate reading because, you know, it's hard to get young people. They don't have landlines. As anybody who's a parent knows, kids don't answer their cell phones. You have to text message them or go to them on Facebook. So it's just harder for pollsters to get a reliable read.
Well, we want to talk more with you about this and the impact that this will have here on the United States and the rest of the world. So I hope you'll stick around following the break.
All right, we'll be back with more. We're going to take a look at the losers last night and just how badly they lost. For folks here in the U.S., perhaps refreshing to see them fall on their swords the way they did.
You look way too happy about this.
And you are seeing the National Mall right here. This is where today thousands of people have gathered to celebrate VE Day. Of course, this marks the Allies' victory over the Nazis, and you see some vintage World War II aircraft. Maybe some of those are vintage World War II aircraft flying over the National Mall there. That last one looks like a modern-day Cessna, but they are honoring a lot of the airmen who flew in that war, so crucial to bombing raids over Europe, and that helped defeat the Nazis. But many of those veterans today are getting to fly in some of those vintage aircraft that are still in operation today to celebrate, again, VE or Victory in Europe Day over the Nazis. And also appropriate that we talk about the British election here in all of this, our allies in World War II, of course. And we're going to bring back in Newsmax executive editor Ken Chandler to continue our conversation about the UK elections. Ken, we heard the concession speech, and for Americans who were maybe tuning in with bated breath to their first UK election, getting to see these guys hear the election results come back while they're on camera is almost like a reality show, even more so than American politics. But let's listen to Ed Miliband, the Labour leader, in his speech as he resigned.
I take absolute and total responsibility for the result. and our defeat at this election. I'm so sorry for all of those colleagues who lost their seats.
So, Ken, is this a bigger victory for David Cameron and the Tories, or a bigger loss for Ed Miliband?
Well, it's a big victory for David Cameron, no question about that. But you know, just watching that clip of Ed Miliband, this time 24 hours ago, that man thought he was going to be the Prime Minister. He really did. His advisors told him that he'd be able to form a coalition government. He thought he would be, you know, running the country. Now he's not running the country. He's not even running the Labour Party. He's just another man on the street. It's a complete and dramatic collapse for him personally.
All right.
So can I have to ask you, was this a vote for Cameron or a vote against the other party?
It was a vote. It was really, it was both. It was a vote for Cameron and a continuity of the economic policies that the Conservative parties have been pursuing to get the economy back up and running. It was a vote against Miliband because he was seen to have taken the Labour Party a little too far to the left. People, you know, remember Tony Blair, and the Labour Party that he ran was a very centrist party. That's why he stayed in power for 10 years. Miliband was trying to move it to the left, and that made people uncomfortable.
So I have to ask you, what do the UK elections mean for the rest of the world? Why is this so important that we pay attention?
Well, I don't think it's quite as important as we make it out to be anymore. It used to be. The fact is that the UK does kind of punch above its weight militarily. It is involved overseas because of its former colonies. So it does have a lot of influence. But the fact is, these days, it has an economy that really can't afford to make it a world player. Britain has to find a new place in the world, and I think it just has to lower its expectations about how influential it's going to be going forward.
All right. Well, I also want to ask you, too, because we talked about David Cameron's uncomfortable position, and I just like to talk about Boris Johnson because he's a magnetic character to talk about. But we bring this up because Boris Johnson had maybe hoped to take over leadership of the Tory party. But do you think David Cameron is going to face some challenges from the backbenchers there?
Yeah, well, he will do. Not yet, but David Cameron, in what many regarded as a bit of a foolish statement, said during the campaign that he would only serve one more term as Prime Minister. So, in effect, this means that he's going to become a lame duck pretty soon, and there is going to be a lot of jockeying to see who will succeed him.
All right, Ken, well, I'm
Johnson
getting the word. We got to turn our attentions away real quickly, but we thank you for being with us and carrying us through these UK elections to give us the update. Maybe not as important as we initially thought, but still interesting nonetheless to get your take.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.